Nikola Jokic is having his numbers padded? Is that what you're saying?
You heard what the hell I said. I said he had 8 games where he had single-digit shot attempts.
Doubters beware. Nikola Jokic is on a relentless rampage, silencing critics with jaw-dropping feats. The media's endless doubts only fueled his Serbian sensation as he racks up MVPs, propels Denver's rise, and leaves the basketball world awestruck. Buckle up for an epic breakdown of how this unconventional superstar is making fools of the naysayers, shattering expectations, and making a fool out of NBA media. First, let's look at the numbers, because Nikola Jokic's on-court production is exemplified by just astounding statistics. The guy nearly triple-doubled in 2022 to 2023 alone, averaging 24.5 points, 11.8 rebounds, and 9.8 assists per game. That's the kind of statistical profile you would anticipate from a player who combined elements of Magic Johnson, Tim Duncan, and LeBron James. Jokic can score from anywhere on the court, throw out passes like a seasoned point guard, and anchor the defense with his positioning and rebounding ability. His skill set is so diverse and adaptable that it's almost unfair. He's a matchup nightmare for any team, to put it plainly, and one of the most dominant players in the game right now, thanks to his special combination of size, ability, and basketball IQ. The efficiency Jokic maintains while carrying such a heavy offensive load is what makes his stats even more impressive. He shot an incredible 63.2% from the field and 35.4% from three-point range during the 2022 to 2023 season. For any player, let alone a 7-footer who led his team in assists, those are exceptional stats. Jokic is rated as an offensive powerhouse by analytical models, which frequently place him at the top of advanced measures like win shares, offensive rating, and true shooting percentages. However, Jokic has frequently been disregarded and underappreciated by his colleagues, commentators, and the general media despite these astounding stats and his obvious influence in winning games. He almost seems like a basketball anomaly that the NBA community is having trouble understanding. Even further, former ESPN commentator Dan Le Batard implied that Jokic's non-American birthplace is the reason why Americans hate him, claiming that a white American player with the same skill set and disposition would be hailed as a megastar. Even though Le Batard's remarks are contentious, they do bring up an intriguing subject regarding possible biases and blind spots in the NBA media. As you can see, most NBA television personalities and analysts are African Americans, which makes sense considering that the majority of the league's players are black. But this reality also implies that players who don't match the mold, like the quiet, white European Jokic, might not connect as much with the commentators from the media who cover and analyze the game. Jokic also doesn't play the kind of flashy, highlight reel basketball that usually draws in fans these days. While players like Ja Morant and Zion Williamson dazzle viewers with their strength and athleticism, Jokic plays with a more basic, ground-based game that emphasizes footwork, positioning, and thoughtful decision-making. Ask any coach or analyst who has closely examined Jokic's play to see how effective this strategy is. It may not be as immediately satisfying for the average viewer. It's an interesting dynamic, and Jokic appears to be fully aware of it. In a revealing interview, he admitted that he hopes nobody will remember him as a basketball player when his career is over, but rather as a good father and husband. When I finish my career, I really wish nobody knows me. I just feel sad whenever you go to a bar or restaurant, some people are just taking the phones out and trying to record you. Talk about keeping things in perspective. For Jokic, basketball is simply his job, a means to provide for his family and pursue his true passions, like working with his beloved horses on a farm somewhere far away from the bright lights and cameras. It's a mindset that clashes with the modern era of athlete branding and celebrity culture, where star players are expected to be as much entertainers and personalities off the court as they are performers on it. But despite his apparent indifference towards fame and media attention, there's no denying that Jokic's incredible on-court exploits deserve to be celebrated and appreciated on a much grander scale. Just ask his NBA peers, like Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors, who has been left in awe and admiration after battling against Jokic in the playoffs. I've had my fair share of good matchups against Joe, but he gave me total and complete hell tonight, and I had absolutely no answers. Green said after one particularly dominant Jokic performance, "He was brilliant, and he is in incredible shape, man. You all should have seen this man running the floor. I had to turn on my burners a couple times to keep up with him. He was just going and going going. Green's candid comments about Jokic's boundless energy, skill, and overall brilliance on the court sound like a ringing endorsement for a player who most certainly has it, contrary to the doubters and naysayers. And those detractors exist in droves within the basketball media world. Just take a look at some of the absurd narratives and terrible takes that have been peddled by high-profile NBA analysts like Stephen A. Smith, Nick Wright, and Kendrick Perkins. Despite Jokic's dominance and his team's success, these pundits have consistently downplayed his greatness, made ridiculous comparisons to players from bygone eras, and even accused him of stat padding without any real evidence. Smith, for instance, infamously claimed that Jokic doesn't have a dominant post game, only to be immediately shut down by his own colleagues who presented data showing that Jokic's post-up plays are the most efficient in the league over the past decade. Jokic isn't known for having some kind of dominant post game now, that's not his game, Smith declared, somehow missing the fact that objective tracking metrics had Jokic's post scoring as the single most efficient half-court play across the entire NBA. Meanwhile, Nick Wright of FS1's First Things First took the disrespect to new lows by suggesting that if Jokic won the MVP award, he'd be the worst MVP winner since Dave Cowens in the 1970s. A laughable comparison when you consider the massive gap in competition levels and overall talent between the two eras. In Wright's mind, Jokic was a second tier who would get drafted 9th overall in a hypothetical redraft of current NBA players. And let's not forget about Kendrick Perkins, the former NBA big man turned ESPN analyst who not only accused Jokic of stat padding, a claim quickly debunked by facts and data, but also tried to play the race card by implying that the predominantly white NBA media voters are biased against non-white players like Jokic. 80% of the voters are white American, 20% are other nationalities. Perkins stationed on air, ignoring the obvious flaw that only 6 international players had ever won MVP prior to Jokic's run, all of whom were black. It was a baseless claim rooted more in Perkins' own apparent biases than any factual evidence. Of course, it's not just the high-profile pundits who have piled on the Jokic slander. Even some of ESPN's own game commentators, like Mark Jones, have been caught taking subtle and not so subtle shots at the Serbian star on social media. From questioning his defensive impact by tweeting clips highlighting a single blocked shot against him, to diminishing Jokic's vaunted basketball IQ by comparing an awareness play to something he'd seen. Jones's behavior toward the Nuggets star became so shocking that ESPN was ultimately forced to demote him and remove him from their finals broadcast team in 2023. It was a justifiable punishment, considering Jones's long history of subtweets and slights clearly designed to undermine Jokic's standing as one of the game's greats. Like others in the media realm, Jones seemed unable to wrap his head around the idea of a lumbering, non-athletic white dude from Serbia captivating the basketball world through sheer skill and savvy. But here's the thing, no matter how much the media tries to downplay, disrespect, or outright hate on Nikola Jokic, the guy just keeps on dominating and proving his doubters wrong. With each passing year and milestone, Jokic makes more and more of a mockery out of the countless foolish narratives and slanders thrown his way by the mainstream media. Whether it's Stephen A. Smith dismissing his post-game, Nick Wright calling him the worst MVP ever, or Kendrick Perkins playing the race card, Jokic simply lets his brilliant all-around play expose their ridiculous takes as hopelessly off-base. Even some of Jokic's doubters have been forced to admit their failures in recognizing his greatness. Perkins himself confessed the media was to blame for not properly marketing and celebrating the Joker's genius. Mark Jones became a high-profile casualty, demoted by ESPN due to the constant negativity he directed at Jokic on social media. In the end, Nikola Jokic is making an utter fool of the NBA media industrial complex that tried so hard to diminish or ignore his historic impact on the game. With each trophy raised and each stat sheet stuffed, he reinforces just how clueless and off-base the loudest shouting heads truly were in their assessments. The Joker's dominance is no laughing matter, except for the media punchlines he keeps exposing with his transcendent play. So what do you think of this? NBA media's disrespect towards Jokic? Write down your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more NBA content.